true or false? This week, the Reform Lincolnshire County Council have removed all flood risk management from their agenda. Liz, over to you first. Do you think Reform would do that considering the place flooded last year?
Oh my goodness, I can't believe I don't know this. Have I not heard of this? Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if they have. They probably have.
Okay, Marina, do you think they'd do something like that?
I think this sounds perfectly on brand for them, so true.
So you're both saying true?
Yeah.
It is true. They have taken it off the agenda.
Oh, God.
It flooded last year, and they've taken it off the agenda.
And yet, what they did put on the agenda was taking away that was it the parking restrictions or the slower lanes? What are they called? Is it TNTs or something? What are they called?
Oh,
LTNs.
That's it. LTNs. That's it. They're removing LTNs.
They're removing LTNs, even
councils,
though.
But there aren't any.
Councils are not any. Yeah.
There are no LTNs in reform-led councils.
The biggest problem for Lincolnshire farmers has been flooding. I mean, I think that I can't believe that any farmer would vote reform. But
there you go. Question number 2, over to you, Marina. A Reform councillor quit this week after 2 weeks of being in the council because he worked for the council and didn't realise that would be an issue. Do you think a Reform person would do that?
Yeah, true. I think there's also been quite a lot of councillors going, oh, I didn't realise what this entailed. So, yeah, I think that's true.
Liz?
Yeah, it's true. I'm pretty sure it's true.
It's true. He didn't realise working for the council meant he couldn't run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the distinction between being the decision maker and the person that actually does the work does need to be defined.
Wowzers.
Marina, 12 Reform councillors in total have quit after being elected to post.
False.
True or false?
False, it's more.
How many do you think?
Isn't it like 29? 39? 29? I don't know. I think it's more than that though.
Liz?
Oh goodness, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's more. I don't know the exact number, so true. It's false. False.
29 is the last count that I had.
Last count.
Such a geek.
Okay, Marina, this is for the win, so no pressure. No pressure. Liz, in total, that means Reform are going to cost the taxpayer £290,000 because you're going to have to redo all those elections. But does that mean... Actually, I'm going to have to make this more true and false. Does that mean that the DEI savings they've made will be outweighed by the councillors quitting?
No, I don't. No, I can't see that. No.
So that would be a false.
Because there aren't any savings to their DEI policy. It's nonsense. So it's going to cost taxpayers more for electing Reform councillors because they will have to pay to rerun the elections.
Marina?
Also false, and I would go even further and say that they did make a very small saving on DI. I think it was around the tens of thousands. I mean, I want to say like 28,000 by scrapping something minimal and token. But the variance in terms of what the taxpayer is left footing the bill for is significantly higher.
It's actually, you are correct. You're both correct. Basically, it's 60,000 savings for DEI is the last calculation. It's going to cost 290,000. Welcome everyone to the Sunday Roast, and congratulations everyone. You voted in our guest, Marina. Welcome back.
Oh, that's so nice. You're a nice bunch, aren't you? Thank you so much. I've been dragged from I'm very congested. Apologies, but because you wanted me here, I had to listen to the people, right? So here I am.
It's all about democracy, right?
Yeah, it's all about, but we're very pro-democracy.
And my lovely co-host, can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Liz Webster, founder of Save British Farming, always going on about Brexit, food and farming, public health.
So they're all important, especially after the Brexit deal this week, which is going to be interesting to dig into. Marina, we were talking about democracy just then. Do you think the Brexit deal is going back on democracy, as so many right-wing commentators have said this week?
It feels like just 2019 all over again, doesn't it? Oh, well, it's almost like a double negative, isn't it? Because we undid democracy when we did Brexit, because Brexit was a pack of lies. And and this is, I think, a Peter Oborne quote, but when you lie to steal people's votes, that is the death of democracy, right? That is not democracy. You are lying, and they are placing their trust in you, and then you are taking their vote, and you are abusing their trust. So no, I don't think it's an erosion of democracy. I actually think it's a way for us to repair what was broken in our democracy so many years ago.
Do I dare play devil's advocate in this and try and push forward I could try. I look like I might regret that. Liz. What do you think about this Brexit deal? Do you think it's undoing democracy at all, or?
No, it's doing minimal undoing of the absolute aberration that was ensured from democracy being totally and utterly, strangled with a dreadful referendum, which was just a poll. It didn't make a decision. It was harnessed and used against democracy, us the people, to accept being placed in a very deep, dark, horrible well. And we really have no escape out of it, because each of the parties, to some extent, have become infected with Brexit. In America, Trumpism only exists in the Republican Party. So it's easy for the opposition to oppose Trumpism, which in effect is just Brexitism, the same kind of plan. But here, within each of the parties, they've all got a degree of thinking that they either have to respect this dodgy vote, or that they've got people in their parties in power who are believers in Brexit. And so that's why we're in this hellhole of a trap. It's true that only 27% of people voted for Brexit of the entire population in June 2016. Millions of those have now passed away. Millions of new voters have come through. And we really should have had another referendum once the deal became clear about what Brexit was. And the biggest deceit to our democracy was not allowing us clarity to decide exactly what we were voting on. And that's why democracy is still in a really bad mess.
Do you think it's recoverable? Do you think that we can actually go back into the EU? Do you think we can get rid of this stigma and anti-Brexit feeling and change it over? Does it feel like that at the moment? Because still doesn't, even though Starmer took a step towards us, towards the EU, it hasn't really felt like anything's changed or anything's going to be improved. We're still in this sort of weird limbo. What do you think, Marina?
Maybe this is a rejoin by stealth, perhaps. Maybe it's like, grandmother's footsteps, and slowly, like catch you monkey, that we will have to do it, because the backlash is so significant. If you just had to look at the papers, if you went down to your local supermarket and to pick up your bread and milk, and you had a little look at the newspaper stand, like, it was covered with newspapers talking about this betrayal, this surrender, it's going back into the EU, which is also very, by the way, triggering and provocative language. When you think back to David Amess and Joe Cox, we talked about dialing down this kind of language, and actually we've gone back to it. So I think what Starmer has done is very sensible. You'll have people like myself, I'm sure Liz, Liberal Democrats, all saying it's not enough, but I think it's a good first step. There was always going to be a reset at this point. It was part of the original roadmap anyway. Should he have gone further? I would say yes. I'm sure Liz would say yes as well. But I think what we found about Keir Starmer is he treads very carefully. So, and I don't know quite who he's trying to appease at the moment. If you look at the way he's speaking with regards to immigration, if you look at the fact that he took GB News with him on a recent trip rather than other news outlets, it looks like he's really pandering to the reform voter base. Yes, I know, Alex, you're looking, that is correct.
Say what? He only took GB News?
Yeah.
Where?
Where was it?
But this was this week, and it was only
this
GB
week.
News.
It was this week.
Yeah.
Why is he doing that?
Morgan McSweeney.
Yes, exactly.
Or McSwindle, as he's become known in one article by bylines. Yeah.
Do you want to give the listeners some context, just in case they're not aware of him?
Yeah, Morgan McSweeney is a bit like Dominic Cummings. He's an advisor, and he's come up through the ranks, and he, is saying that he won the election. In my view, Labour were not really the winners of the election. They won because the Tories lost, and also, us guys were involved in the tactical voting push. I think actually we did it. We won it. And McSwindle, as he's been called in the bylines, is taking the credit for winning elections. And when you Adam Bienkov dug a bit deeper, it seems that it's been overblown, and he is not he's not the genius that he's portraying. But his association is with someone called Maurice Glassman, and he was made a peer by Ed Miliband. Maurice Glassman is so closely aligned with Nigel Farage, it's terrifying.
Isn't he besties with Steve Bannon as well?
And besties with Steve Bannon.
And went to Trump's inauguration.
The only parliamentarian to get invited into the rotunda. Not even Nigel Farage got that, but he did. Go on, Liz. I'll tell you what Steve Bannon said to him in a minute. Go on, Liz. I can see you want to jump in.
I only hope that somebody in the Labour Party who's a member has put, I hope several Labour members have put in complaints, because last week Maurice Glassman, it was in the Sun, I think, he joined a campaign of Nigel Farage and GBBs. And, if he's a Labour Party peer, that's really, that he should lose the whip for that, because you're not meant to go and back other parties. So I think, to me, this is what the sort of cancer within a lot of decisions is here, that there seems to be a problem with McSwindle. He also got rid of Sue Gray, who was one of the reasons I voted Labour, was I sort of thought, well, she's a very experienced civil servant. She was obviously, on the Remain side, because obviously that was the sensible side. And then she was ousted. And nobody knew about McSwindle before the election, really. And suddenly he's there. And this morning, apparently, he's having an argument with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer wants to now get rid of the cruel 2 child cap. And McSwindle is digging in on it. Nobody voted for McSwindle. It's time for McSwindle to go. Let's get him in the Rose Garden and hold him to account.
Yeah. All these unelected bureaucrats.
Did you, so to circle back to the point I was going to make, apparently in the rotunda, this is what Glassman said. Steve Bannon walked past, pointed at him, and went, "He's the man."
I mean, I heard an independent source told me that Steve Bannon was going around pointing at your chest saying, "This man is a hero, this man is a hero." The MAGA crowd really are into Lord Glassman.
Well, what I would say is that the only instruction I was given as the only Labour person there was to build relationships with the Trump people. So I tried to do that. But there's a long story going back. Blue Labour is sovereigntist. We were very strong for Brexit, to leave the EU. I want to see my country actually embrace the possibilities of that industrial strategy, build up our army, be the leader in Europe, those things. And the story itself is a literary story, really. A number of years ago, I got a book from someone I'd never heard of, had no idea who he was, which was J.D. Vance, who sent Hillbilly Elegy with a note saying, I like your work. I mean,
so he's a fan of yours?
Well, I don't know so far, but my mum always said, if someone gives you a present and there's no note, there's no need to write a thank you letter. But if someone gives a personal note, you should say thank you. Mm-hmm. So I followed her advice and I wrote back and I said, thank you for your book. And I thought it was a good book.
Did you, we talked about Glassman last week, but I also put in the clip of Glassman talking about Brexit sovereignty and democracy in the UK means having the king as the sovereign leader of the UK parliamentary system.
To talking pints.
The king.
The king. Mm-hmm. And to me, as a Brexiteer, that sovereignty, the king in Parliament, that is what it was all about, isn't it?
Our sovereign king, our sovereign lady is now the sovereign king. And it was remarkable, Nigel, because I love the ancient constitution, the balance of power rather than the separation of powers. I think we've got a stronger democracy than America, for example, or France. I think there's more to it. And what happened was the Speaker of the Lords, Speaker of the Commons, pledged their fidelity to the king. But what the king said was he pledged to support democracy and liberty. So that was the covenant. It was.
Yes.
We haven't got a social contract. We've got a covenant, an institutional covenant, and it was remarkable to see it alive. The room was alive
'cause,
with it.
I mean, you're an academic, and
Well, don't exaggerate.
Well, you are, and you lecture on political theory and things like this, and you understand the British Constitution better than most. For most of us, for most of the country, we've learnt for the first time what a constitutional monarchy is.
Well, this is the incredible thing, is that the monarchy underwrites democracy. It's a paradox. It sounds wrong, but it is right.
Oh,
And then he said, I know how people would find this contradictory, but it's true. And it's like, yes, it is true that it's contradictory. It makes no sense what you've just said. The king is not part of our democracy. He should be nowhere near it. And yet, that's what he was saying. And then Farage was going, yeah, that's why I voted Brexit. I wanted our sovereignty back. Go on, Marina. I can tell.
I just don't know. Do you know what? Did you say that to trigger me?
We wouldn't be trying to do.
People, why are they even? They shouldn't have a platform, let alone power. They've just got these base, like deluded, rooted in like inequality and basically feudalism. Like it's just like what is this in this day and age?
It's wild, isn't it? And they're sat there on TV bragging.
Charles's kings, in terms of kings called Charles, have never been good for the British people.
This Parliament is, by my authority, terminated, dissolved.
History will tell us that.
I put that clip out separately on my own personal channel, and I had people writing in being like, let's have the revolution again. Let's go back Charles first and lop off their heads. I'm sick of this.
That's the thing about the French. That's what I like about the French.
But Marina, Glassman believes that the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution were a mistake.
Does it? Well, of course he does.
Yeah, because he believes in sovereign. He wants King Trump as well as King Charles.
Gross. But that is, if you look at, that's the thing over in France. It's like, here they raise our pension age. No one bats a bloody eyelid. There they talk about it. Like they maybe just, propose the idea, and people set the shit on fire. And it's like there is an understanding of power of the people of France, and it's because it's like not that many years ago we showed you,
and that's democracy.
Stay in line. Yeah, exactly. People power.
And that's the beauty of what you see happening in France. Do you ever see what they did with the speed cameras when they started going up?
The French Interior Minister has accused supporters of the Yellow Vest movement of damaging around 60% of the speed cameras on French roads.
In France, they just blocked the motorways and yanked them all down.
Yeah, they put tires around some of them and set them on fire. Imagine doing that here.
We're so subservient here, aren't we? But again, there's other places as well where they're just like, nah, like Italy, nah,
Yes.
don't fancy it. We're going to take all of August off. Nah.
Do you? I mean, from your experience of being in Italy and Italian parents, would you think that they would rebel like that? Because I'm aware of the French, but I don't know about the Italians. I'm curious. They would get that angry, or would they just go, nah, I'm off, leave you to it?
Going to eat my lunch and have 5 hours.
Well, there is that. You do not interrupt the lunch. The lunch it's like sacred. Like you would not catch Italians, in my experience, over their desks like we do, eating their sandwiches, crumbs going into their keyboard. No. Some Italians still in my family in southern Italy, they will go home from work to their wife who has made them a plate of lovely warm pasta and then go back to work.
Wow. Okay, that's very cool. Do you know that it's illegal to do what we do in Britain and France with food? You can't eat at your desk. It's actually written into law.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Thing. You will rarely see a French person grabbing a sandwich on the go or in front of the computer. Lunchtime hours in France are from 12 to 2 p.m. and can you imagine that it's okay to dine up to 2 hours? Moreover, it's not allowed to have a lunch at your work desk, so normally there is a cafeteria, enterprise cafe restaurant inside the building you work in, or you go to dine at local restaurants.
But I love shoveling a panini into my a panino into my mouth while I'm looking at a spreadsheet, Alice. Why would you take that away from me?
Oh, you take me back now to when I used to work at Saatchi's, and one of the secretaries was behind me, and she always used to eat pot noodle at lunchtime, and I had to go out because I absolutely hate pot noodle. The smell of it. Oh my God. But in fairness, I did get my own back on it, because in those days I used to smoke. So I can't believe that I used to smoke at my
Oh
desk.
God!
Did you?
Absolute shame.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I remember smoking in the pubs, which is obviously now such a
Oh.
foreign concept. It's
I
funny because I
gave
also
up when I was 27. I'm glad. It was the best thing I ever did.
Very good.
I do remember that Red Dwarf scene where he's stuck on an ice planet. There's the only two things he has left to eat: either pot noodle or dog food.
Did he choose the dog food?
It's impossible to find us in this weather. They could be 10 feet away and walk straight past us.
And that's it, there's nothing else.
Just a pot noodle. Oh, and I found a tin of dog food in the tool cupboard.
Well, it's obvious what gets eaten last then, isn't it? Can't stand pot noodles.
No sponsorship on this channel from Pot Noodle anytime soon.
I can live with that. Talking about monarchy and our disdain for it, did anyone get wind of what took place with Prince Andrew's aide, John Bryan? Happened about 2 weeks ago. He got into a sting operation, a honey trap. In fact, it was real classic, basic stuff.
Yes, and this is where sometimes Piers Morgan is a very interesting one, because I think he's a twat most of the time, but every now and then he does some good work. And what he did with this guy, where he basically grilled him on this honey trap, and what he said during it was a great bit of journalism, I thought.
I think that part of the reason that I was saying these things is I had quite a lot to drink, and I just was not speaking the truth, and I have to admit it, and I regret very much what I said, and none of it reflects what I actually believe. And what I was saying was stuff that was basically you could Google anywhere in the world, and I regret it sincerely and deeply.
I mean, the key part of what you were caught on camera saying was what I'm about to play. Let's just play it and then I'll ask you about it. This is where you talk about Prince Andrew and whether he may have had sex with underage girls.
I was really pissed because he lied to me about Epstein. And then I did a big thing in the Daily Mail saying that I believed Andrew. And then I found out he was lying. I was so pissed. No, that he was f***ing underage girls. That's not cool.
I mean, look, I've had a few drinks in my time, but I don't remember having a few drinks and then saying the complete opposite to what I actually believe to random people in bars. I don't know why alcohol would make you do such a U-turn on what you think.
Well, I think it was much more than alcohol. I think that it was alcohol combined with somebody that, you know, I have to confess, I was very taken with this young lady, and she, you know, the more encouragement of the negative things that she liked to hear. And so I was trying to, you know, it was a mistake. I can't say it any other way. And I can only say that I regret it very much. And it does not reflect in any way, shape, or form what I believe to be true.
But the thing that blew my mind, that should be a bigger story.
Of course it should.
And it's not being reported.
This is why we do not have the free press that we are led to believe that we have. That is the firm kicking into action and making sure that certain stories don't reach the top of the pile.
Yeah,
I don't know anyone. Yeah. I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone around me, like friends, who've heard the story.
Yeah.
It's only when you're in the political social media framework that you start, and because of what you said, Piers Morgan, and you're almost like, how did Piers Morgan get a hold of this?
Yeah, how did he get away with talking about it?
Well, he spends more time in the States these days. Maybe it's that. I mean, if you want to get the real news about Britain, you need to go and look at news in another country.
That's terrible, isn't it? But then if he's able to talk about it on Talk TV, why then are other press titles not going, this is a bit juicy?
They're there to make money. They're a capitalist system that would sell front page. That would sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
Like, no doubt about it. So that's why I'm confused about it, because I'm also going, they did all the Epstein stuff. They had no problem talking about that whatsoever and railing against Andrew. But then I'm also going, I couldn't quite remember. Were they sort of talking about it a bit? And then Andrew did the BBC interview and it was such a car crash. It just forced it into the headlines where it was like, well, there's no point in hiding this because everyone's seen the interview and he's clearly guilty. Or is it just a case of, I can't remember the timeline. Does anyone remember?
I don't remember. All I know is that, you know, they want to talk about Asian grooming gangs, but they don't want to talk about the royal ones.
Yeah. Yeah, or indeed the multi-millionaire and billionaire grooming gangs as well. Those ones, fine, all good.
Or the church.
Farage doesn't seem to mind those.
It's constant baiting and distraction, isn't it? Yeah. And I guess for the press here, they don't want to upset the firm, and that's what it is. And that's because if the public really did know what was going on, we would have a revolution.
I thought Piers Morgan wanted to get a knighthood. That's why the rumor was that he wanted a knighthood. It's the allegation. The allegation is that he wanted a knighthood, which is why he flipped on Meghan so hard. Because there's a clip of him saying Meghan's going to have a tough time of it because the royal family are renowned for being a bit racist.
She's mixed race, she's American, she's a divorcee, actress. Those are 4 ticks. No member of the royal family, the senior members, ever thought they would see having to be ticked when it came to Harry's bride. Meghan's marrying into a family which has, to put it mildly, a dodgy track record on race. It's not Meghan Markle's problem, it's their problem.
And she's going to be the first black lady to have married into the royal family. And then he flipped and just started banging on about how awful she was.
I think the flipping was driven by her deciding not to be chums with him. That's what I think it was based on. I think he's got such a huge ego because obviously he spoke about the meeting, right? They had I think they met in a pub or something like that, and they got on really well. And then by all accounts, she ghosted the shit out of him, which you're allowed to do as a man or a woman. No, it's not very courteous, let's be honest, but you are well within your rights. If you decide I don't want to continue this relationship, friendship, whatever, you're allowed to do that. That does not warrant then someone to hound you, especially publicly on their morning TV platform, completely unjust. I think that was what did it, because he's got such a fragile ego. That would have hurt.
So you don't think he wants a knighthood at any point, or do you think he's
he probably does as well.
So just to give context to what John Bryan actually said, he was caught in a honey trap talking to a lady. You don't know anything else about her. And she and him were in some bar or club and they were talking about Epstein. And he just openly said that not only had Andrew had sex with Virginia Giuffre, he insinuated there was more than one.
Of course there would be more than one.
Of course, but we've never heard that sort of advocated in public. It's always been he went to Epstein Island and it was just with Virginia Giuffre and she made the claim it was 3 times and everything else. But this is an act. Do you know how he's connected to the royal family, this John Bryan, as well? It's not like some random guy.
But he sucked their toes.
Oh yes. Whose toes was he sucking?
Prince Andrew's wife.
When they were married.
When they, according to him, they were separated, right?
Fergie.
At the time, but they
Fergie's
weren't divorced.
toes.
Yeah, Fergie's toes.
You guys are younger than me. I remember all of this so well. Oh my God.
I remember it. It was
I'm younger, but that photograph is etched into my brain.
It's just terrible.
So he also claimed in this video, just to add to the absolute bizarreness, so he has an affair with Andrew's wife, and then he claimed in this video in the honey trap that Andrew was away for about 255 days a year with the Navy. So John Bryan claimed in this video that he brought up Princess Eugene and Beatrice, and that he was their dad.
Okay. That's Prince Andrew's wife. They were separated. Sarah and I sort of fell in love. And we lived together for like 7 years, 6 or 7 years, in my house in England. And I raised their 2 little children. They're so cute. Beatrice and usually. Those were my children. Those were my kids. I raised those kids.
What? And that they're best mates. I'm just like, and he's had an affair. Like, what is going on in that family? It's so twisted.
They're all absolute like wrong-uns. They're just wrong-uns with money and titles. That's all.
And protection.
Yes, that we fund.
I think that's the thing that gets me. When you hear Nigel Farage then going and saying, this is what we voted Brexit for.
The king.
The king. And to me, as a Brexiteer, that's sovereignty.
People on the farm who call themselves farmers, but they're not necessarily a farmer. I think most farm owners voted Remain. I mean, if you're running a business and you're accepting subsidies from the European Union, you really do understand how important that subsidy is to your business. So while some were taken away with the thought of doing marvellously, or they knew that they would be able to deregulate and intensify with factories, I'm sure there were some that voted for it for those reasons. But those reasons have come true for them. We've got 20% more farm factories since Brexit. But the whole thing of actually getting Remainers angry with the food system is actually the biggest sacrificial lamb of Brexit is our food, which is our public health. And so this whole resentment of you voted for it, so I don't care, I don't feel sympathy for you, is actually an assault of Brexit. And I always try to say to people, care about your food, because the reason we've got these trade barriers is because of food. And yes, the reset has meant that we're going to have slightly less trade barriers going forward, and that's to be celebrated. But it still means Brexit's here. It still means this reset is worse than the deal that Theresa May had on the table, because we probably would have ended up still hanging on to our EU citizenship. Brexit is a sadistic project on most of the people, the same as Trump is, and it's a huge redistribution of wealth from the poorest to the richest. And until that's undone, I won't rest, or I'll have to leave if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. I don't think that's just.
Can I ask the group? What do we think? Is that a possibility?
Ask what?
That is
Nigel Farage. Can he be? Can he be PM? That was a real Unagi moment. I was totally thinking that question and being like, right, I'm going to pose it. You totally beat us to it. I quite like the historian Roy Casagrande. He's a history lecturer, professor at Austin University, and he talks about Brexit. He actually has a whole quarter of an hour in one of his lectures, which are on YouTube, talking about the damage of Brexit.
Oh yeah, we're global international fools. Wonderful case studies for all to see.
He said 9 times out of 10, human beings. So he teaches Middle Eastern and Western history and the Americas. So he knows a lot about the Aztecs and Mexico. And he said there's just a propensity with human beings. 9 times out of 10, you'll vote to do the worst thing for you. And I'm just going, every time that question comes up, and I keep thinking about history and all the dumb shit that human beings have done in the past, I'm going, there's a fucking chance. Yeah. Especially with first past the post.
Which he's now changed his bloody mind about, right? So Farage and Tice, they all very much, we want proportional representation. We want proportional representation, right? This shows you how absolute charlatans they are.
Well, proportional representation, we'll be debating that in a sec. You're passionate about this?
Yes, I have been for a long time. I felt that the House of Commons does not represent where the country is on so many things.
Now, because it's looking like actually they're going to have a very decent vote share, that they perhaps, don't have a problem with first past the post so much. What? Well, all of a sudden, actually, first past the post, this sounds like a jolly good idea. I think we should keep this. Doesn't that show you what slippery bastards they are? They have
They're not to be trusted, for sure.
Yeah, no principles. All they care about is this pursuit of power and whatever else that comes with it.
It's very classic, though. It's a bit like Labour and the Conservatives. Once they're in power, even if they were sort of inkling with the idea of proportional representation, they realise that first past the post in history is basically winner takes all. You don't have any accountability. You don't have to negotiate with anyone. Once you're in power, it is humongous compared to most states. Like, Trump doesn't have the power. Even though we think that the president is powerful, he does not have the power that the prime minister and his cabinet have in comparison. Yeah. And that's the thing.
You've got the wrong people in politics, though, or something happens along the way where you become corrupted in politics, because you can, when you're standing outside of the tent, you can see that it needs to be more democratic. You can see that first past the post is not a democratic system to represent a country this diverse, with such diverse opinions. How can you have that system? And yet it's like the closer people get to power, the more they go, oh, it doesn't matter actually if people's votes don't represent. People's votes don't represent what actually happens in Parliament? Like, how can you lose sight of that? That tells me you're not in it for the right reasons. And I appreciate that probably sounds really woolly and really naive, and maybe I am a bit naive, but God, it's so depressing.
I don't think naive's fair. I think you're realistic and optimistic in how the system should be, and you're critiquing it from the. I mean, we could talk about Marx. As much as people critiqued his system, he was going, this is how you could have a utopian system. This is why it could be really good. And he was pointing out the flaws in capitalism and going, well, maybe there's this new way that could be broached. All the stuff that you're talking about, I mean, Italian heritage, you got rid of a fucking king. The French got rid of a king. The Americans got rid of a king. Like, we've still got that embedded in our fucking system, and it's fucking corrupt.
And we blame ourselves for the Brexit vote, even though we know it was advisory, even though we know only 27% of the population voted for it and they were conned, and even though we know only 37% of the people that voted on the day voted for it. And that is the biggest con they continue to put on us, because they're actually making us feel responsible for what they've done to us. And the shame belongs on every single person in power who has allowed this to continue. And as much as I think Keir Starmer is preferable to the alternatives, that he needs to be pushed in the right direction, because we have to work within the system that we've got. He still holds a lot of responsibility for Brexit, because, he was there helping Corbyn, and we ended up in that mess. I'm absolutely certain that if Ed Miliband hadn't stabbed his brother in the back in 2010 and he'd won the Labour leadership, we wouldn't have even had the bloody Brexit referendum. But there we go, sliding doors and all that. But we are captives of a system, and we have to try and keep retraining our brains and keep independent and not be hypnotized by the bait that they put into us to get, because it is divide and conquer it all of the time. That's what they're doing to us, and it's what they did throughout history with the British Empire. The same thing with the Mau Mau uprising, with the Troubles in Ireland. All of these things are about, and I kind of get it, because we do it with our cattle here. When we have to move the cattle, we have. Well, psychologically,
you create nations and divide lines
for certain things. So when you need to bring them in, we're sort of like, okay, you stand here, you stand. We have to have an assault, and we have to sort of persuade them to come through one gate, and that's what is done to us. That's what I see. But they don't do it to me, because I think for myself.
So you've got the Chagos Islands, which were split. You've got Palestine and Israel being created, which was a split. Do you know where India gets its name from?
No.
It gets its name from the Indus River. Do you know where the Indus River, what country the Indus River is in now?
No, go on, enlighten me.
Pakistan.
Oh, well, of course, yeah.
You couldn't get more of a nasty, evil little plot being put out, where you take the name. The whole thing with India and all these other countries that Britain has split in half is divide and conquer. I just thought to myself, when I found out that's where India gets its name from, and the British deliberately made that separation. From what I can tell, there was no actual justification for it. They created this problem out of nowhere. I just thought that was absolutely wild. And it just said to me how
oh my goodness,
vicious,
yeah,
that the British can be.
Oh, just on that bit of trivia. where did I read this? Where did I read this? And it just made a lot of sense to me that the term the British stiff upper lip, or the origination of it, it actually dates back to the British Empire, because the Brits committed so many bloody atrocities that they had to have this stiff British upper lip to sort of get away with it and not be fazed by it.
That's fascinating. I love that and hate it at the same time. But then it comes back to that whole class system, because you would associate that with the aristocracy, wouldn't you? That would be like the stiff upper lip would be not associated to all Brits, but I sort of, when I think of that term, I think of the aristocracy having that sort of attitude with the stiff upper lip. Would that be fair?
Yeah. I think it's a fundamentally British quality, isn't it?
I've got a theory with that and where that comes from as well. All the atrocities that we did has made us, and this actually comes back to some. You had a really interesting interview with Rizzlekicks, where you were talking about the male patriarchy, and you were talking about
Jordan
how the
Stevens.
system's set up, and that you've got psychopaths that run up to the top.
Yes.
Because, and this is something I advocate for, and I've actually said in political parties they should have a system where they check for psychopaths and extreme narcissists.
They should have psychometric testing for sure.
We were talking about that the other day, weren't we? So it's funny that you had it on the Trawl. There you go.
Yeah, he was basically saying there was a study conducted, and there are people that are, is it amygdala? What's the bit in the brain?
Yeah,
anyway,
the amygdala.
They're basically, the way their brain is constructed is different in that they don't feel compassion, empathy, and they don't even care that, like, consequences don't even matter so much. Now imagine
the frontal lobe of the brain.
Yes. So imagine anyone watching this, right? Imagine if you didn't have those three things. Imagine how you would operate, how ruthless you would be, right? Which explains why, when you look at this study, looked at people in power, CEOs, big old chunk of them have exactly that mental makeup, because it enables them to rise to the top and not give a shit who they're stepping on, who they're hurting, etc., etc. And those are the people who tend to be in our politics as well.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the whole culture of the upper classes having children, babies, then giving them to nannies and then sending them to boarding schools.
Yeah.
The whole development of a brain is, I mean, you've got young children, Marina, so, you know, the baby needs to feel safe and nurtured. And it's fear that actually is toxic to the brain, because we have adrenaline. When you're fearful, the adrenaline flows and it actually fries the brain. So the hippocampus is like the processor which puts through images from the frontal lobe to the back. And so as it's developing, if the hippocampus is damaged, then that's when you really have problems with the frontal lobe, and it never properly develops. And so you sort of become infantilized. You continue to be a child, and those emotions don't develop because that's where it comes from.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty sure that our system of sending children to, you know, have a bit of hardship in boarding school, and I'm a survivor of that, but I didn't go until I was 13, is a lot to do with it. And lots of people like
Absolutely,
Graham, I can't remember his surname. Graham is really cross about people having the advantage of going to public school and going to boarding school because of the old boys network and all that kind of thing. But I said, you don't understand, having survived boarding school, that I always looked at my peers who didn't go to boarding school where I grew up were actually lucky, because they stayed at home. They had their home cooked dinner every night. They didn't have to survive the Hunger Games in boarding school as many of us had to do.
Was it? Was it? Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just saying that stress of that. The younger you started boarding school, the more psychological damage, I would say, is there. But it does mean that you're able to stand on a platform and be confident. And yes, you've got the network behind you. But there's a lot to be said for boarding school, not especially when in my time it was much tougher than it is now. And there's a lot of arguments for saying that public school is boarding school is really bad for you.
So
Yeah,
that's sort of
I don't disagree with that. I just want to make a little point on that. Is that there was a book written by, I've forgotten his name, but he went to one of these public schools, boarding schools, and he talks about how awful it is and how they beat the sensitivities out of you. And George Orwell, in fact, it was like as soon as they find a vulnerability or a weakness, it's stamped out of you. George Orwell had a love for butterflies, and as soon as that was discovered, he was ridiculed for it, absolutely like bullied for it, and so they are taught from a very young age to sort of not have any, just be very strong, not have anything, not be vulnerable, not show an emotional side. And this is essentially beaten out of you, which is then why you like compassion, empathy, all these things are weaknesses. But just on that, I just wonder, there was a tweet last night, and Christ, the state of this tweet, because it's just on the public school, private school, whatever you want to call it, situation. Graham Stewart, right? So Graham Stewart is Tory MP. He tweeted, so this is about basically the Esther McVeigh was saying actually 13,000 people having to be moved from private schools into state schools as a result of Labour's policy. Graham Stewart MP wrote, 13,000 children whose parents sacrificed everything for a brighter future. 13,000 children with hopes dashed, with opportunities crushed. 13,000 children betrayed by policies that stifle their dreams. 13,000 children who deserved better. He is talking about 13,000 children who are going into a state system, which is where the vast, vast, vast majority of children go. And he's making out that system is absolutely terrible. A system that his bloody party presided over for 14 bloody years.
So
the state of that.
That's horrific. It says so much about this country. It says about the class system. It says... And one of the most interesting things I found with that argument, that they're all complaining about private school children having to go to state. I've not really heard any pushback going, why are you attacking state schools?
Yeah,
that's where the majority
precisely.
comes from. Why are you
94% of
slagging
children
them off?
go to state schools. 94% of children go to state schools.
Yeah, it's a huge number. But interestingly, I'm pretty sure I've read that the boarding school system and the private school system was set up for the empire. And it's really interesting that you brought up the sensitivity. So obviously I brought up earlier about the splitting of countries in order to create division and then control them. So there's no empathy, towards the people who orchestrated that. They were quite happy just to see people kill each other so they make a profit. And then you've got this really interesting thing that I've been reading about Americans and British people in trade negotiations compared to other countries. Like, for example, Japan, although that might not be the best example because they haven't got a great history and track record. But there's this culture that I've been reading about within British trade negotiations where it's we are going to have a numbers thing. We're going to trade based on statistics and like Trump does all the time, but not with like any interaction over feelings. So for example, if you trade with the Japanese, from what I've read, or European countries, there's like a sort of family element. Come over to the place, meet the kids, get to know each other. Let's build some trust and everything else. Whereas with British and American trade negotiations, the thing I keep reading about is it's just, we're trading this, that's it, there's nothing else, and we're going to be really hard line with it. And the reason I bring that up with empire, and one of the arguments with this, and it's what you were saying with the boarding schools, which were arguably created to help with the administration of empire and beating out that sensitivity. You look at all the genocides that Britain was involved in, all the famines that they were involved in, all the killing and murdering they were involved in, and all the other barbaric actions, like getting rid of cultures and religions and etc. You've got to have a sort of sense of emotional detachment to be able to deal with that, which then you hear in reflection from other countries when they start talking about how they trade with the British and the Americans. Like they've had to cut off that empathy, that amygdala, switch it off, and then they can go and deal with that sort of situation in a really statistical way. But we're not that. Like literally, the movie Equilibrium has that amazing scene where they're like, we're not robots, we have feelings.
Yeah. And I'm going to say something maybe a little bit provocative, which is, I wonder how the world would operate if, say, it were women in charge, right? I saw a very funny clip, and it was basically like a spoof of it was like a world leaders meeting, and it was all women going, and all the different countries, all the flags in front of them. How's it going over your end? How's that war going on? Oh yeah, we sorted it out. It's fine now. What about you? No, we're pretty good over there. Oh great. Shall we break early for some lunch?
Is anyone having any environmental problems, anyone?
No.
No.
No. No.
No.
None.
Ditto.
And what about conflict, social justice, any war, any hardship, conflict in their continents?
No, we just talk it out these days.
Yeah, for sure there should be more women in power, yeah. Definitely.
There's an
We're too
amazing
emotional,
interview.
Liz. We're too emotional, apparently.
Yeah, well, of course they say that, yes.
Yeah.
But,
There's an
yeah.
amazing clip with Jordan Klepper where he interviews a MAGA supporter, female MAGA supporter, and she's like, "Oh, I don't think we should have women leaders." And then he just nails her and goes, and she says, like, if there was a war, they'd be too emotional. They'd just press the button and that would be the end of it, and we'd all be at war. And he's like, every major world war has been led by men.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
I know.
Wow, talk about like destroying your own corner. It's a bit of a classic.
Also worth knowing and remembering that women didn't vote for Brexit either. They only 49% of women voted Brexit, but 55% of you men did.
Yeah, you lot, you.
Time to go now. Thank you very much to our guests. Thank you very much to the co-host. We're on a summer break now. There's a little bit at the end because I'm going to advertise a couple of books that some of our guests have written. So please stay to the end. Thank you very much, Marina. Thank you for coming on and listening to our voters. Like, that's an amazing thing that you've done.
Thank you. Don't forget to come and if you do enjoy my content, that sounds really cheesy. Please come and listen to the Trawl podcast. We are currently 28th, I think, in the news charts in the whole of the UK. We are above Piers Morgan.
Brilliant. Well done, you.
Yes.
Links are in the description and the comments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Be sure to tune in next week for another exciting story from the files of Police Squad.
Marina, you've been put into the Twilight Zone. You are stuck on a desert island because we're going sort of summary at the moment.
Okay.
And the only way you can get off the island is having one of these two people come and help you. You've got to pick one to help you get off the island.
What if I don't want anyone? I just want some alone time.
Woman Friday.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. No one touching me.
Gemma, we had Gemma on last week. She missed that option. She ended up picking.
Okay, go.
To get off the island, you can either pick Priti Patel or Suella Braverman to help you construct your getaway ship, which I thought was particularly ironic as they...
Oh, gosh. Okay, it's not Suella. It's Priti, because they're both bloody awful. But Suella is particularly useless, whereas I think Priti is capable, but in an evil capacity. And she's very I will do this, I'm very determined. So if we're having to both get off the island, I'd imagine she'd be quite useful. Suella Braverman, you're dead.
See, I slightly think to myself, wouldn't Priti Patel just drill holes in the raft and then launch you out?
What are we going on it together? No?
Just for yourself, I should have.
So I take it, and then I go, see you later.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Liz, your two people to help you get off the island. Lee Anderson
Oh.
or Matt Hancock?
Oh. Oh. God. I might prefer to drown.
Oh, gosh.
I mean... I know this is horrific, but I think I might prefer Lee to Matt Hancock, because Hancock's just so... He just makes me want to gag. At least you could have a really good rouse with Lee Anderson, I suppose. That would be energising.
Yeah. I can't imagine Hancock's very handy either.
Oh, no!
Well, not maybe in that way.
I do have to wonder, how did he meet this other this who was it? It was his sister.
That lady, I forgot. She had a very soft like her surname. Something Gollo. She's half Italian.
But what does she find attractive in him? I'm baffled.
Maybe government contract. I don't know.
This is a reminder